the last matchup we're discussing, Matt, is I have a lot of notes, so I want you to go first. The second seeded Tennessee Volunteers, about a 2.5 3-point favorite against third seeded Creighton, total of 143.5. My raw numbers have this about Tennessee minus 2.4, minus 2.5. And you go back to the Vols avoiding disaster against Texas when Connect and Ziegler in the round of 32 combined to shoot 2 of 16 from behind the arc. Creighton, as we hit on, probably should have lost to Oregon if Dante wasn't going to the line down the stretch and Shellstad didn't get hurt. And if McDermott finally didn't adjust in the second overtime, because they were getting killed with those ball screen sets with Kuznard and Dante. So where do you see the matchup edge, and who do you like, with both of us potentially leading towards Creighton here just because of our futures?
Yeah, I have Tennessee winning this one by about a little less than 2. The over-under is going to be about 144.5, 145 is what I currently have. Here's my thought about Creighton. And I liked Creighton going into this. I think the best thing that can happen for a potential national champion, as I have picked Creighton to be my national champion, is to get a scare in the early round. And I talked about, you may have seen me say it on Twitter. I said, I'm terrified that's going to happen against Akron. I said, I just know it's going to happen against Akron. And it did not happen against Akron, but it did happen against Oregon. And it was a scary situation. Literally that Oregon had 2 guys, maybe 2.5, that were literally just eating them alive in Kuznard and Dante. Shellstad was the third, but he got hurt and he was out near the end. But the fact that they got tested so much and did not play their game, finally showed up in that second overtime, was really a testament to their resilience, to the point where I think, like I said after that game, I'm like, I really would not want to be Tennessee. I said, because I think Creighton came out of that game. That was kind of the stinker. That was the one that you didn't want to see, and you were hoping you didn't cost them the game. But they came out of that game clean. And I still think that's the better team with a higher ceiling. Now, the analytics don't agree with me. But again, we're looking at offense and defense, and this is where, Tennessee, 25th in the country in offensive efficiency, not necessarily particularly elite. And again, I've seen that again with Tennessee. Granted, they have a lot of firepower there. You can't deny that with Connect and Ziegler and Vescovy. They have but up front, I think this is going to be an easier chance inside for Kalkbrenner, in my opinion. I think Dante was a major problem for him. I think this will not be as big a test. I think this is where you can get Kalkbrenner being a much more of an offensive contributor in this game versus Tennessee. I'm probably going to continue to side with Creighton here, even though the analytics say Tennessee by about 2 in this one. That's what I have it at. But I still think that bad game was kind of the wake-up call for Creighton. I like them against Tennessee in this game. It's going to be the ultimate test between me and my youngest daughter, because I have Creighton going all the way, and my 13-year-old daughter has Tennessee. So I guess we're both watching that game.
So you go back to the Oregon game, and I want to challenge you on one thing, and then I'll share what I have on this one. Creighton, like you said, they got battle tested, right, against Oregon, but they shot 38.5% from 3. On the flip side, Tennessee, similar instance. You get tested against Texas, especially in the second half. Your best player doesn't shoot well, neither does Ziegler, and here you are in the Sweet 16. So among battle-tested teams and teams that are due for more positive regression, wouldn't that be the Vols?
I don't necessarily say that, because I think that Texas probably presented more of a challenge to Tennessee. In fact, I had Tennessee losing to Texas.
Wow.
Just thinking that was going to be, I really believed in what they had going for them with Texas, with Dessou and Asmus and Mitchell. I thought they had a lot of talent there, and that could overcome Tennessee if Tennessee had an off game. Now, Tennessee was able to deliver. In my opinion, there's a big difference not a big difference, but there's a difference between Texas and Oregon. Texas was a team that was always going to be in the tournament. Oregon was a team that got hot on the shoulders, largely of N'Faly Dante. I think that performance from Creighton was probably a little less expected than the one for Tennessee versus Texas, in my opinion. So, fair point. I'm going to give you that, and that was a close game. You could argue that they were tested as well. They win that game in regulation. So this will be a very interesting contest. I can understand why it's going to be close, and I could definitely see why people will pick Tennessee in this game. But, I've always had this long-term belief that offense is always going to trump defense, and in this situation, I think Creighton's going to do the same for Tennessee.
Well, a couple numbers that would agree with you, at least on my end. Not saying to bet Creighton because of this by any means, but you're going to see it blasted everywhere on every social media account. Rick Barnes 4-16 against the number in the NCAA tournament since 2010. So not covered against Texas. Can you trust Tennessee? Can you trust Barnes in the tournament? And with Creighton, the only reason why I would suggest taking money line, or among others, the biggest reason would be high variance team. If they're going to cover the number, they're likely going to win if they're on from three. To your point, if you're going to trust Creighton's offense to continue shooting well, it's not like they've overshot expectations to the nth degree. They've shot about maybe a little bit above their season average, but nothing crazy. So you could easily see the three-point efficiency continuing. And then with Tennessee outside of threes, they thrive on getting to the line. Creighton allows the lowest free throw attempt in college basketball. They don't foul. So is Tennessee going to be able to get those advantages? And if not, can Creighton control the defensive glass, speed up Tennessee in transition? Maybe. But you go back to the final game against Tennessee in the regular season with Kentucky spacing out Tennessee. Some people may point to that game as a reason why Creighton could do the same thing. Tennessee allowing a top 75 three-point scoring rate in college basketball. But I just wonder how much of that was Kentucky trying to get a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament, and Tennessee outside of senior night not really having a ton to play for. Then you think about Stephen Ashworth trying to hang with Sakai Ziegler. That's an athleticism disadvantage for Creighton. Creighton overall athletically had a disadvantage against Tennessee. So I'm kind of split ends here. I have my Creighton future, one of my 2 futures left. I have Clemson Final Four and Creighton to win it all. Creighton was placed preseason, so I don't have nearly as much optimism, by the way, keep that in mind, with Creighton as I did last year. And you go back to, Eric, one last thing that I want to say, which is negating my love for my Creighton futures, or lack thereof, I guess. Creighton's path last year in the tournament, they beat NC State in the first round. They beat Baylor. Keep in mind, not a Baylor defense that, like we saw 3 or 4 years ago in the NCAA tournament. They beat Princeton. Physical Ivy League defense, but not much to write home about at that defensive end when you compare them to high major teams. Then you lose to San Diego State. Tough game, down to the wire, but still, that was their first true physical defense they faced. Tennessee, arguably, I know Oregon, like you said, they peaked down the stretch, but Tennessee, their toughest, most athletic matchup in the tournament so far. That's concerning to me. But hey, if Creighton goes off from 3, and if Connect has another off game, if Tennessee gets spaced out like they did against Kentucky, and if Barnes struggles to call sets down the stretch, Creighton probably wins the game outright. But there are so many variables, man. Kind of to my point with Alabama. If Alabama shoots well, they probably move on, or above 40%. If Creighton shoots well, they probably move on.
Yeah. Tennessee, one key metric on they're third in the country in defensive efficiency, but 287th in defensive three-point attempt rate. So they're going to pack it in. They're 17th defending the three if you're looking at field goal percentage. But what does that tell you? They will usually allow those threes, but they'll allow those threes under duress. Now, is Creighton going to be able to potentially convert those threes? How are they going to perform off the dribble? That's going to be the question, because they probably may not get often wide open looks, but that's kind of the fingerprint that I get whenever I see that kind of variance. When you look at that big difference between 3-point attempt rate and 3-point percentage, it usually means that a lot of those shots are kind of coming up out of duress, or they force them into advantageous situations defensively that work for Tennessee. The question is Creighton going to fall for that? Now, that's a very talented three-point shooting team. They live and die by that 3. Will Tennessee employ the same strategy against a Creighton team that is as good as they are from three-point line?
Right. There are so many factors here, and the key is when you mention off the dribble and maybe not being able to get as many catch and shoot looks, will Creighton get worn down by Tennessee's physicality throughout the game and then start missing some of those off the dribble threes that maybe they would theoretically make on a given night? Like, you look at three-point efficiency off the dribble, Creighton top 5 in college basketball, which goes without saying just because of how reliant they are on the 3. Also 34th in college basketball when it comes to three-point frequency off the dribble. You go back to those 2 UConn matchups, man. First time around in stores, home game for UConn, Klingon's first game back, so you factor in some of those situational angles for UConn, but Creighton didn't shoot well. got worn down, got blown out of the gym. Creighton, second time around against UConn. I wouldn't necessarily compare the margin of victory, but more so to just Creighton shot an absurd percentage from three, and they knocked off UConn. So that's kind of going to be the difference here. Does Creighton get blown out, or do they win outright? That's why I say money line or nothing if you like the Jays.
I completely agree with you, and I see that point of view. Like I said, it's really tough to say. So many darn variables here. That's just really going to be tough. Like I said, I get this feeling like that. Good, fair point about Tennessee. They did get challenged as well, but the fact that you really put a scare in Creighton means they're going to bring it now, in my opinion. I think that was the game that I was hoping I was going to see against Akron in round one that was going to wake them up, but they got it in the first two rounds. I'm not so sure Tennessee got the same kind of scare. Texas is a much better team. I just believe that Creighton is now going to be focused in on this game. I still like the advantages up front better for Creighton in this game. I think that was I think Dante created a big problem for Kalkbrenner. A lot of people I talked to me were like, where was Kalkbrenner? Kalkbrenner has done nothing. And then all of a sudden he hit a big three in overtime. I think he has a much better game here. I just look at this and my gut feeling on this one says the Blue Jays.
I hope you're right. Not any sort of an edge for me. I'll kind of live or die here with my Creighton futures. I'm not going to hedge just because you're a high variance team. You hit a lot of threes. I kind of like the number I got preseason at 40-1. So I'm going to stick with it. Not hedging my Clemson Final Four futures either for that matter at this point, despite them being 2 games away. But I'm open, since I don't have an edge raw number wise, coin flip-ish in regards to my projection and the point spread, then hopefully Creighton moves on.